Hello and welcome back. In the last session, we looked at how we can protect our branches and also enforce code review. Now, this is super important to maintain good code quality and also make sure the main branch always contains your production quality code. In today's session, we are going to talk about GitHub Pages. Now, whenever you have a project and you're ready to share that project with the world, you don't need to spend money on web hosting. So, like you have a project and you want to host that online, generally you may end up spending money. But with GitHub Pages, you don't have to do that. You don't have to spend any money and you can host your project and you can share it with everyone you want. So, if you have a static website, the one built with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you can host it for free directly from your Git repository using GitHub Pages. So, GitHub Pages is a free service that takes the files in your repository and serves them as a live website. Now, that is the simplest way to deploy a personal portfolio, project documentation, or even a simple blog. Now, the best part of this is deployment is as easy as a Git push. Now, before we dive into the details, if you found this content helpful, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to keep making more videos just like this one. Now, let's get started. First, you need a repository with your static site code. So let's create a new repository for this. So we'll go to the home page, we'll go to new, and we'll give it a name. So I will name this as portfolios. You can name it whatever you want, and we will create this repository. Now I will clone this repo to my local machine and we'll start creating the necessary file. So we will go with SSH. I will copy this and I will clone the repository over here. So done, and let's go to that repo, and at this point this is empty. I don't have anything. So now we will start creating the necessary files. So for your GitHub Pages to work, you will need to have this index.html file and it must be within the root directory within your repository. So we will create a new index.html file and this is the code I'm gonna use. I will share a link to this repository in the description. You can use this if you want, or if you have your own code, you can use that as well. It's totally up to you. And I will save this file. Now you can have other folders as well for your CSS and your JavaScripts and also for images, but index.html should be at the top level. For our example, we will have the CSS file and also a JavaScript file within this same directory. So we will create this style.css file. So this is the style.css file. I will save this and we will have a JavaScript file. So this is my JavaScript file. Looks like there's a typo. Let me fix that and I will save this. So these are my files. So I have the index.html file. This is the main file, and then these are optional. If you want, you can have them, but if you want your website to look nice, you will generally have those files. Now once you have these files, you will need to push these files to GitHub. So let me quickly add this and let me commit this. Sorry, so let's say initial draft and I will push this. So git push origin main, and this will push our code to our GitHub repo. So here let me refresh this and I should be able to see my code. So this is step one. You will need to have the necessary code within your repo. I mean, you can use an existing repo, that's also fine, or if you want to maintain a separate repo, that's also fine. So the choice is completely yours. The second step would be to activate the hosting service from your repository's settings. So navigate to your repository, go to settings, and here on the left hand side bar you should be able to see these pages. Click on this and you will be presented with a few options here. So here you can see the source and it says deploy from a branch. So this is the most common and straightforward method. You will see another option here which is your GitHub Actions. This is a more advanced method we will skip for now. So make sure deploy from a branch is selected. Next, choose the branch you want to deploy from. So the most common choice is the main branch. So our code is also in the main branch. So here we will change it to the main branch. And then here select /root. So you have a couple of options, /docs. So slash is basically within the root directory. You can also have the files within the /docs if you want. And then save this. Now, after you save the settings, GitHub will automatically start the deployment process. This usually takes a minute or two. You can monitor the progress by looking at the actions tab to see what is happening. So here you can see pages build and deployment. So this happens automatically. You don't have to worry about it. The moment you select the options in the pages section, GitHub will do this for us. So you can see build and then report build status, deploy. So all these things happens for us. So we will give it a few minutes for this to complete, and done. So you can see the deploy over here. So it says completed. So deploy to GitHub Pages and complete job. So this is completed. So you can see evaluated environment URL. So once the deployment is complete, your site will be live at a default URL. So in my case here, you can see this is the default URL. Okay, so the URL format, so you'll have your HTTPS, your username, GitHub username, github.io, and then your repo name. So we will click on this. Let me open this in a new tab, and I should be able to see my application or the website, basically the static website. So your website is now live and can be shared with anyone. All right. You now have your own website hosted on GitHub, and anyone can access it using this URL. All right, so you just share this URL, and whatever you have in the website, people will be able to view that content. So like I already mentioned, you can use this to host your own personal portfolios or any project documentation or even a blog. All right, so those are some of the use cases, but essentially this is where you can make use of the GitHub Pages to kind of use the files within the repository itself to be hosted as a website. But wait, can I map this to my own domain? So at this point, we are using the domain provided by GitHub, but can we use our own domain? The answer is yes. So for a more professional look, you can use a custom domain you own, like let's say mywebsite.com. In my case, I have a domain registered in Hostinger. So here, this is my Hostinger account, and here, this is the domain that I have registered. So I'm going to use this as my custom domain. So I'll go to DNS and name servers, and I will need to add few A records. So how do you configure this customer domain? So on the same GitHub Pages settings page under this custom domain, you can enter the domain name that you have. So if you want to use a subdomain, you can use www. But if you want to use a root domain, then you can use the URL, like mywebsite.com. So in my case, I will take this, and this becomes my root domain basically. But if I want, I can add this subdomain as well if you want. I will leave that as it is, and then click on save. Now, in the back end, GitHub will try to check the DNS and all these things. So we will have to give it a few seconds. Now, this is one part. There's one more part that you will need to do. So here you can see it is basically complaining like, hey, DNS check is unsuccessful. So what we will have to do is we will have to create a CNAME record for this. So we'll go back to the home page, and here you see the CNAME. So it is created automatically, but it should have it. So if it's not there, then go ahead and create a CNAME file with no extensions and have your domain name inside the file. So the file got created, and this again triggered the GitHub Actions for us, so that my GitHub Pages will be hosted on my own custom domain. So here under this, if you see, let me look at the complete job, and you can see here evaluated environment URL, and I can see the URL. But wait, my GitHub Pages is still showing unsuccessful. So the second part is we will need to update our custom domain with the necessary A records. So within your domain registrar, like in my case Hostinger, you will need to add these 4 A records pointing to GitHub's IP addresses. I will give these IP addresses in the description section. You can add them, but please remember that this will take some time for the propagation to happen. So in my case, this is still not done. So let me refresh this. And done. So you can see DNS check successful. And if you hate waiting, you can go to this website dnschecker.org, and you can give the domain name. So in my case, I will give the domain, and a record is what we have used, and click on search, and you should be able to see the propagation. So there's a typo, sorry. And you can see the propagation has completed. So if your DNS check is still showing unsuccessful, please wait and make sure this DNS checker, the DNS propagation has completed. You can use this to check whether the propagation is completed or not. And that's all. And the last option is to enforce this HTTPS. So we want to make sure our website uses HTTPS to serve the traffic, which is more secure and encrypted. Now we will use this, and let's check if we are able to access our website or not. And there it is. Alright, so this is how we can make use of your GitHub pages to host a website on GitHub and use the files stored within the repository, and share your project with anyone you want. Congratulations, you now have the skills to host a professional static website for free using GitHub Pages, with or without a custom domain. It's a fantastic tool for showcasing your work. And that brings us to the end of this session. If this video helped you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more content, and let me know in the comment section if you have any queries. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next session.